I'm just going to talk about the most simplest sleeping system from the ground up for winter camping. It's really important when you're camping in winter, especially in snow and cold climates, to get a really good night's sleep. And to do that, you need to be warm and comfortable. So starting from the ground up, we're going to start with just a really old-fashioned foam mat, which is not only going to give us the first barrier of insulation between us and the snow, it is also going to protect all the other fancy sleeping mat and the sleeping bag above from getting any sort of damage to it. The one I've got here is just a simple Z one. I much prefer that than the ones you roll, because the Z one I can just lay it out flat. If I get the round one, I have to roll it out, and then I have to dive onto it to stop it from rolling back again. But it's up to you. The next mat is my kind of comfort mat. This is also going to insulate me as well. Now, I just bought a new one actually, because my other one got damaged. This one sounds like a crisp packet, which I'm a bit annoyed about, but that's how it is. When you're buying this type of mat and one below, you really want to look at something called the R number, the number which is going to insulate you from the ground. And you really want to get something which is meant for winter, an R number over 7. So again, looking at your sleeping system, the insulation is by far one of the most important aspects of camping in winter. It doesn't matter if I've got a -30 fancy down sleeping bag. If I don't have good insulation underneath me, I'm going to get cold. It's about -12 degrees Celsius outside. If I took my sleeping bag out, laid it in the snow, I'm going to get cold because the feather's going to get squashed and there's going to be no insulation between me and the ground. So it's really important you have a good insulation between you and your sleeping bag. Right. You also need to look at what kind of sleeper you're on. This is a lightweight mat on top here, and it's quite mummy shaped and quite narrow. If you're a bit bigger, a bit taller, then you're going to need a bit bigger, a bit taller mattress to sleep on. And also, if you lie on your side a lot, or your back, or like me, you just like roly-poly all night, then you're going to have to think about that as well. So you don't roll off your mat all the time, which is going to be uncomfortable. Moving on to the sleeping bag, there are many different types of sleeping bags, but a good quality winter sleeping bag is required while camping in winter in Norway. A minimum of like a -30 or something like that. -30 is the standard sort of number banded around degrees Celsius. It doesn't have to be feathers, it could be synthetic. For weight ratio to warmth ratio, down is the one everyone says is the best, and it is, compared to the synthetic bags. But down has its disadvantages. They are incredibly lofty, they're light, they're really warm for their weight ratio, but they have one big downside. If they get wet or damp, then they'll start losing that insulation and they'll lose their good quality effect. Now you can get water into your sleeping bag by several ways. One, it can come from external, snow and rain or condensation or frost inside the tent, or from you sweating or breathing out or going into your sleeping bag with damp clothes on. So while this sleeping bag on day one will be very kind of puffed up and really good properties there, all there, as the days go on, it'll start reducing as moisture gets in the sleeping bag. So it's really important with a down sleeping bag to make sure whenever possible you air it. You take it out, you take it outside for a sunny morning and let all that sort of moisture in the sleeping bag puff go away, and it'll remain that loft. It's really important to keep on top of that, and that's less so important with down bags. So you might want to do that with a synthetic bag. You might want to do it with a synthetic bag as well, but it's less important with synthetic bag. They can tolerate more moisture than your down bag. The disadvantage of that is the synthetic bag are generally heavier and more bulkier, and as you're carrying or bearing your stuff through the mountain, you really want to go as lightweight as you possibly can. I use a down bag in winter, and I have to spend time looking after it. As simple as that. Warmth to weight ratio, it is absolutely brilliant. The same weight of sleeping bag, I mean a synthetic, just wouldn't have the same warmth ratio as this bag I have here. So there you go. Moving on from that, so this is the basic sleeping system. It's about when we climb into our bag as well, which is really important. If I'm going in after a day climbing or ski touring and I'm getting back to the tent with fixed base and I've got thermals on which are now damp I need to change those. If I get into my sleeping bag and start warming myself up, then I'm going to basically dry out my clothing. And that process of drying, evaporation and moisture is going to go into my bag, but it also is going to cool me down as well. So I want to shift these and put on other thermals. And this is almost like my tent clothing, and I keep this with my sleeping bag. So I have a pair of thermal legs and thermal top. And I take off my kind of moist, damp, smelly clothing and I hang that up to air it out, if possible outside. If I can't do that, in the tent, in the part of the tent, and let it dry out, and that will help with some sort of odor management, and it'll dry out the next day. Next morning I get out my bag, I put on my outdoor thermals, maybe a bit cold at first, but I'll warm them up, and I'll make sure that my other thermals are aired out and they're placed back in the sleeping bag for the next night. As well as this, I would have some sort of thin hat, this is a balaclava, a wool balaclava, and some sort of neck gaiter or buff, which I can wear at night in my sleeping bag. I wear these thermals in the sleeping bag. These sleeping bags are often rated that you'll be wearing thermals. It's quite important sometimes, well, I think it's very important to wear thermals in your sleeping bag, because if something goes wrong in the night and you need to get out of your sleeping bag to sort out a tent guy line, or maybe the wind direction change, it's good that you can get out your bag with some of the clothing on already to make a quick emergency for the tent, and then get your outdoor clothes on to sort it out. You've got to be in the mountains, especially in winter, sleeping in a ready form if things go wrong. Again, I want to have some sort of blue. I'm not talking about a big beanie here. I'm talking about having a thin hat. This is a balaclava and the neck on the head, keeping that part warm as well within the sleeping bag. And I want to really refrain from breathing into my sleeping bag. I don't want to breathe air in it. It feels really kind of like a good idea to pull the sleeping bag over your head and breathe in warm air. And in the short term, I've done it many times in bivouacs, breathed into my sleeping bag to warm it up. But it's actually not a very good thing to do, because I'm losing about half to a litre of liquid, especially in winter, especially in a cold night, through breathing. And that's going to go into my sleeping bag, especially with a down bag. It's going to eventually, over the long term, really reduce the quality of that sleeping bag, because it's going to get moisture in it. Therefore, I want to breathe out the bag. Now it's going to be cold. If it's minus 20 in my tent, I'm going to be breathing in and out minus 20 all the time. That's going to be cold coming in, and it's going to really affect my throat, and I'm going to lose a lot of moisture. So having some sort of material or buff around the face to breathe through that, it's not only going to be more comfortable, it also means that I'm going to retain a little bit more moisture. And when I breathe through it here, it's going to be slightly warmer. And I'm not going to be doing minus 20, it's going to be a little bit warmer than that. Hopefully a little warmer. You can buy fancy little gadgets that do that for you. We've been living with that for a long time. It's up to you if you want to get one of these fancy breathing aids. I'm also going to have socks on as well. The reason why I'm going to have socks on is that I've over the years become frost damaged, a bit of a, you call it a occupational hazard with my type of work. My feet frozen quite properly, and I get cold feet. It's also to do with age as well. And so if I'm going to wear some socks inside my sleeping bag to keep my feet warm. I find if I get my feet cold and get in my sleeping bag, they can remain cold for a long time. So another thing I'm going to have with me is I'm going to have several flasks. I'm going to fill this full of hot water. I'm going to put it in, screw the lid on properly into my sleeping bag to help warm it up. Down sleeping bags and synthetic sleeping bags work slightly different properties. And therefore, if I get into my down bag or synthetic bag, it's going to be cold. Minus 20 all day, my sleeping bag's been in the tent all day, it's going to be minus 20. So therefore, when I get in, I'm going to have to use my body energy to heat it up. So therefore, I want to give myself a helping start by filling up a flask like this, making sure it's screwed on. I don't want it to leak in my down sleeping bag. With hot water, in it goes as a hot water bottle to help that process of heating up my sleeping bag. Cold feet, put it down at the bottom, keep my feet warm. It also means in the night time, I have something to drink. Put warm water in there, put that in the tent, it's going to freeze. I can't drink it. I'm also going to have another flask, clearly labelled for taking a pee in. It may be impractical to go out the tent at night time to go for a pee. There could be very good reasons for that. It could be storm, or it could be really cold. If you open your down sleeping bag, jump out in your thermals, nip out for a pee and back in again, you could lose all that warmth in your sleeping bag and have to start all over again. So you want to have a pee bottle, which is going to be clearly labelled from your drinking bottle. What size you need, you're going to have to work out what you need, and it's probably a good idea to have not the same shape and not the same colour. So again, if you pee in your flask at night time and it's not possible for you to dispose of it quickly outside the tent, then you might need to keep it in the tent, because if you don't, it freezes, you won't be able to get it out in the morning. Another thing about people say, should I just hold on to my pee for the next day? I don't want to get out my sleeping bag. The answer, what I've heard from many people in my own experience, is no, you should go. Use up more energy to hold the pee in than you will by getting rid of it and having a good night's sleep. If you pee in a flask and it's warm, you can always just keep it in the sleeping bag and get more energy out of it to keep the sleeping bag a little bit warmer. Basic sleeping system, full stop. Good quality foam mat to protect you from the initial ground. An insulated mat over, which is going to give you comfort and more insulation. The R number is the important number, then a good quality sleeping bag. Forgot one thing about the sleeping bag, the cover on it. This fancy sleeping bag by PhD Designs has a dry shell cover, so any sort of frost will form in the tent at night and sort of raining down will be able to swish off it and won't be absorbed into it. If you don't have that sort of fancy cover, then think about getting a cover for your sleeping bag, so therefore you can get that off and it therefore doesn't start. Because if you get frost on the outside of your sleeping bag and then the sun comes out and it gets warm in the tent, or someone lights a stove, it could get absorbed into your bag, which is going to be really detrimental to the quality of the feathers and reduce the insulation properties of it. Okay, any questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks for listening.